I bought this rear on Marketplace for a great price, but you're always taking a chance. So let's zip this cover off and see if we got ripped off or not. What the heck is this? It's cold, it's sweating. How did this get in there? Welcome back to Spank Ranch Garage. Today, we've got a pile of GM 14 bolt rears here, and we are going to build a high ground clearance unit for my 86 K5 Blazer. So if you're watching this video, you probably already understand they're a pretty tough axle and they are very cheap and easy to acquire. However, that big downside is they offer horrible ground clearance. Some of the worst I've ever seen. So let's fix that. I want to strip everything non-essential off this axle. Once I clean it up and paint it, I want to lighten it up because I'm going to be manipulating it quite a bit in the shaving process. The rear hubs on these are absolutely awesome. It's just a little snap ring, a keyway, and your spanner nut there. Get a special socket, goes right in. They work absolutely awesome. Okay, bearing stayed with it, fine with me. Wow, other than the fact that there was a random cold beer in here, the inside of this rear looks phenomenal. Excellent wear on the teeth, excellent tooth pattern. Can't ask for anything more. Now I'm going to be re-gearing this. This is a 410. I'm going to be putting a 456 in here. We'll see if we can get a good pattern out of her, but these rears are very easy to set up. So now they took the carrier out and I got that cold natural light that was stuck in there out. Otherwise it looks really great in here. All the adjusters move easily by hand. No red flags in here yet. The fluid's a little bit dirty, but I'd expect that for a truck of this age. So let's pull the pinion carrier out. How nice is that? Fully removable pinion carrier. Getting into the meat and potatoes of the ground clearance of this rear, the intention of this video and the intent of this project. I want to know how much ground clearance this rear has in factory form, and then I want to reduce that ground clearance, or should I say increase that ground clearance as much as I can without getting too crazy with things. So to do this, we need a decent baseline, and all you need is to set the rear in a level position to the floor and grab two measurements. You want to know distance from the floor to the bottom of your axle tube, distance from the floor to the bottom of the housing, and then you need to know your axle tube diameter. We're going to do a little quick math and normalize all of this and determine how much of the housing is below the center line, and that's what matters. The reason I say this is because you go online and you say, oh, how much ground clearance does a Sterling 10.5 have? How much ground clearance does a Dana 44 have? And everyone's like, oh, I get 7 inches with 31-inch BF Goodriches, and I get 12 inches with 37-inch Swampers. Everybody runs a different tire at a different pressure in a different weight vehicle, measures differently, whatever. Get all that out of the equation. It is center line of axle to bottom of housing. That is math. There is nothing that can go different with that. So let's get into that. But this is your differential. You have a theoretical center line through the middle of it. And then you've got your floor down here. Here's the two measurements we took, 49 inches and 43.5 inches. You know that your axle tube is 3.5 inches. So you add that to 49, you divide it by 2 though, because this is the diameter, you only want the radius. That's gonna bring you up to your theoretical center line. That determines how far that is from the floor. We determined the theoretical center line at 50.75 from the floor, and then we know our measurement to the bottom of our housing is 43.5, so we subtract that, 7.25. That is our magic number, and that's what we're gonna improve. So keep in mind, this diff has a 10.5-inch ring gear, and the ring gear is our limiting factor. Outside of turning that ring gear diameter down, let's say we keep it at 10.5, that means that 5.25 inches of that ring gear exist above and below the center line of the axle. So 5.25 inches, I got 7.25 here. We should be able to shave this precisely 2 inches before we even contact our ring gear and gain that much ground clearance. This is the ring gear for this rear, and it measures exactly 10.5 inches, which is no surprise there. We all knew that. And what's gonna happen is 5 1/4 inches of that is below our center line, and 5 1/4 inches of that is above the center line. So without modifying this gear, it is not possible to shave this diff any further than 5 1/4 inches from its center line. Now you can shave off about 1/4 inch diameter with this, so that's, in my opinion, it's not worth it. I could do that, I've been thinking about doing that, but my thoughts are here. This is an unmolested gear set, right? I could go to any parts store and replace this. If I go with a custom turned gear and I have a failure somewhere far from home, I'm kind of screwed. I can't just go get another ring and pinion and put it in. So I think we're gonna leave this unmolested, and we're gonna bring the case up as close to the bottom of this bad boy as we can. About the same there. So let's go ahead and mark that. It's also 11:50 p.m. So I know that my neighbors don't like me because you're running that demo saw wide open for 10 minutes. Definitely makes a little bit of noise. How about them apples? Set the carrier in as a test, and I must have made a measurement error because I've got 1/4 inch between the ring gear and the top of the diff casing. So I'm gonna drop this down actually a little more than 1/4 inch. So I don't know what I did wrong math-wise there, but that's okay. That's why we test fit. So I'm gonna machine this casing down another, I'd say 1/3 of an inch. 300 thousandths, and that's gonna have my ring gear just protruding by about 50 thousandths, and that's gonna be perfect. I'll cut a pocket into my plate that I'm welding on top, and it's gonna look great. Okay, so I ended up coming down 350 thousandths more, and if you're looking straight across the top of that, you'll see that these teeth stick just proud of it, about 10 thousandths proud, no problem. So now I'm gonna design a piece of 1/2 inch plate. I have Cutting Edge off a skid steer bucket. It's a really good steel. It's literally made for dragging across rocks and dirt, so it's very wear resistant. So I'm gonna cut a piece that's gonna fit along here pretty nice. Actually coming down deeper gave me a larger landing here to weld on. So this might be double bonus here. And then I'm gonna mill a pocket in the center of it, probably about, I don't know, 30 thousandths deep to give this some clearance. Plate will be about 1/2 inch thick. Get that baby welded on, and we got this casting completed. So I got it held on with magnets right now. Basically what we ended up here is this is 1/2 inch steel off of a excavator or skid steer bucket. So it's already very abrasion resistant to rock and dirt. And then I came in here, I could just take it off. I came in here and pocketed it with 2 separate depths for the extra clearance for the ring gear that was required. And that kind of just fits up there like that. So I'm gonna tack this thing in place, and then we will heat it up with a torch, preheat it, and we will burn it in with some rod. got this all welded up and cleaned up. It's all one piece now. Hopefully it holds oil. Did 3 passes of welds, kind of tapered it into the housing, so there's nothing to really get hung up on here now. This all will glide pretty well over the rocks. And then I got this pre-bent 14-bolt diff cover. It's 3/8 plate or 1/4 inch plate. It's pretty beefy unit. And obviously that's going to require modification with the whole bottom of this being cut off. So I'm gonna mark this out, start to cut this thing apart, and fabricate a new cover out of this. So warpage is gonna be a real thing here because I am welding a lot, welding very hot and over a broad area. So I think I'm gonna weld the whole cap together first and then come and weld it to the flange. And I have a trick that I'm gonna use to hopefully increase our chances of getting a good seal here. Welds don't look too bad for a stupid drunk redneck. A lot more welding to do though. Okay, so what I've done here is added 20,000 shims at this point across the bottom of the housing on either side. Now when I put this cover on and burn this in, this flange is actually gonna have a slight bow to it, but that's strategic because our clamping pattern is along here. I don't have any clamping along this section. I want good preload into the housing here for sealing this up. So by manufacturing a small bit of warp into this, when I torque these bolts down, you're gonna have tons of compression along this face here and no leaks. That's the plan. All burned together. Anyway, I went in here and milled out some of the welds for the bolts here. These are gonna get replaced with socket head screws. Pretty much all these off-road covers, when you build them, you run into clearance issues with that. But anyway, this is complete, so got to grab a set of bolts for this, and then we will paint this baby up. Gears are set up. Got our spank built cover here. All right, folks, that's pretty much what she's going to look like. Nice and sleek on the bottom. You come right off that bottom of the housing, right up the diff cover. Shouldn't hang up on anything. Shouldn't be low-hanging fruit. Quite a difference from the original unit here. But anyway, kind of a lot of work for what it is. You know, I still got more work. I got to mount spring perches and shock mounts on this and get it in the truck and set up a drive shaft. So it's definitely a pain in the butt upgrade, but I can't imagine just putting this in without at least cutting the lip off the bottom, if not shaving it, because these things just hang so darn low out of the box. So anyway, let's go over some numbers and let's see how we did. All right, guys, some quick maths here. Like we said earlier in the video, what matters is how low the bottom of the pumpkin hangs from the axle center line. That equalizes everything and takes tires out of the equation. So the unmolested GM 14 bolt had 7 1/4 inches of hang underneath the axle center line. After shaving, we brought that down to 5.687 inches for a little over 1.5 inches gain. Now that seems like a crazy lot of work to gain 1.5 inches, but consider to gain that same ground clearance naturally, you'd have to go up 3 inches in tire diameter to do so. I'm not willing to do that, so I have to do what I can to make this work for me. Now, to put all that into perspective, here's a couple other really common axles. So Dana 30 front axle that's in like a Cherokee or a Wrangler has 4.5 inches of underhang right out of the box. So this a Dana 30 has a little over 1 inch more ground clearance than this 14 bolt does. A Ford 8.8, also very common swap, I have one in my Grand Cherokee, has 5.875 inches of underhang, meaning it actually has less ground clearance than a shaved 14 bolt. And then likewise, a GM 10 bolt, the 8.5 one you're gonna find in all the Chevy pickups, K5s, Suburbans, all that stuff, that's got a 5.5 inch underhang, so just about the same as what this shaved 14 bolt is. And that is exactly my point. I'm taking a 10 bolt out. I'm putting the 14 bolt in, and I want to retain as similar ground clearance as possible, and it looks like we achieved our goals. All right, folks, thanks for watching Spank Ranch Garage. See you next time.